Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unravel a massive, honestly mind-bending paradox about California's native nations. We're looking at a story of absolute sheer survival. It's a journey that takes us from the very edge of total legal erasure all the way to these incredible, modern-day, multi-million-dollar land and health reclamations. So think about this for a second. Today, California actually has more federally recognized tribes, about 109 of them, and more separate reservations and rancherias than any other state in the country. But there is a huge catch here. Most of these tribal lands are incredibly small, they're super scattered, and they sit on extremely marginal land. We're going to dive right into exactly how these tribes were relegated to plots that early settlers literally dismissed as worthless, and how, brilliantly, that very same wasteland is exactly what they are actively reclaiming and transforming today.
To really get our heads around this, we need to zoom out and look at the whole picture. We are tracing this incredible 150-year arc, starting from state-sponsored dispossession and leading directly into a modern era of restoration. As you'll see, tribes are now leveraging everything from global carbon markets to casino revenues to completely rebuild their nations. Now, to grasp the sheer scale of what was actually lost here, we have to step back in time. Before European contact, California wasn't just some untouched, empty wilderness. It was actually the most linguistically diverse region in all of North America. We're talking roughly 60 to 90 distinct languages spoken across hundreds of independent, self-governing village communities, often called tribelets. It was this densely peopled, expertly engineered landscape of abundance with a population easily upwards of 150,000 people. But, that map was aggressively redrawn. Before the U.S. even set foot in the picture, the Spanish missions and later the Mexican ranchos had already claimed all the fertile coastlines and those beautiful, well-watered valleys. So by the time the United States actually took control of California in 1848, the prime real estate was already entirely privately claimed. Any Indian land during the American period was basically going to be carved out of whatever was left over.
And here is the crucial turning point. In 1851 and 1852, federal agents actually sat down and negotiated 18 separate treaties with California tribes, officially promising them about 7.5 million acres of land. But facing immense pressure from state politicians and gold rush mining interests, the U.S. Senate took those treaties and secretly buried them under an injunction of secrecy. I mean, no way, right? They literally stayed hidden in a drawer until 1905. Because of this, tribes gave up their land but got absolutely zero in return, leaving them legally completely landless on paper.
Without those treaty protections, the resulting gold rush era sparked a catastrophic population crash. From that vibrant baseline of roughly 150,000 native people in 1848, the population just absolutely plummeted to around 30,000 by 1870. And look, while disease and starvation definitely played a massive role, there was something far more deliberate and frankly devastating happening during those years.
California's very first elected civilian governor, Peter Burnett, said the quiet part out loud in 1851. He explicitly declared, and I quote, that a war of extermination will continue to be waged between the races until the Indian race becomes extinct, must be expected. He formally endorsed a state-sponsored campaign against the tribes. For decades, historians debated the terminology around this, but in 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom formally apologized on behalf of the state, officially recognizing this dark period and the state's actions as a genocide.
Looking at the data completely neutrally, we can clearly see the terrifying bureaucratic machinery of this era. The state raised $1.51 million to directly fund militia expeditions, money that was, by the way, later fully reimbursed by the U.S. Congress. Meanwhile, an 1850 act literally legalized the indentured servitude and forced labor of up to 27,000 native people, which included thousands of children. Historians have rigorously documented over 370 distinct massacres during this exact window. It was a highly organized, well-funded, and legalized system of removal.
So, with the treaties secretly buried and the best land long gone, the thousands of survivors were left completely unhoused and landless. Finally, in the early 20th century, the federal government stepped in and started buying up these tiny, cheap, scattered tracts of land. We're talking places often lacking reliable water or decent soil, basically land deemed completely worthless waste. They gave these to the survivors, and these tiny parcels became known as rancherias. This right here directly explains why California's tribal lands are so uniquely tiny and fragmented to this day.
But wait, because what happened next was the ultimate bait and switch. In a huge push for assimilation, Congress passed the 1958 California Rancheria Act. This targeted dozens of these small bands for a process called termination. The government basically promised to fix their roads and water systems, and in exchange, the communal tribal land would be distributed to individuals. But the reality on the ground? The promised infrastructure mostly never materialized at all. Instead, the land instantly lost its federal trust status, meaning it became taxable. As a result, many families swiftly lost their land to tax sales, and their vital federal health and education services were just completely wiped out.
But the tribes absolutely fought back. The tide finally turned when a Pomo woman named Tilly Hardwick took the federal government to court. Her argument was just brilliantly straightforward. She pointed out that the government never actually delivered the infrastructure it promised, meaning the termination was completely unlawful. And she won! In 1983, her victory successfully reversed the termination for dozens of rancherias. The very law that was supposed to be the instrument of their erasure became the exact tool they used to make a comeback.
Now let's fast forward to the modern era of Indian gaming. You might naturally assume all tribes today are just casino-rich, but the reality is actually a stark geographic divide. While a few tribes lucky enough to be located near major metro areas have built massive wealth, dozens of rural tribes run very modest gaming halls, or sometimes none at all. To help balance this out, California set up a revenue-sharing trust fund. This fund pays non-gaming and limited gaming tribes up to $1.1 million a year, using fees collected directly from the larger, wealthier compact tribes.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core of our explainer today. After 150 years of being pushed on to the absolute margins, how are these tribes taking the very wastelands they were relegated to, combining them with modern resources, and engineering this incredible comeback?
Let's jump to 2024 and see how this plays out in the real world. Following a massive, decades-long campaign led by the Yurok, Karuk, Hupa, and Klamath tribes, the 4 lower dams on the Klamath River were totally removed. It's officially the largest dam removal in U.S. history, reopening 420 miles of blocked habitat. And guys, the most amazing part? Within literally weeks of the dams coming down, fall-run Chinook salmon were documented spawning above the former dam sites for the first time in over a century. That is just incredible.
Simultaneously, the Yurok tribe has been quietly executing the largest land-back deal in California history. By partnering up with a conservation group to acquire land from a major timber company, they have grown their land base roughly 20-fold over the past few decades, bringing it to nearly 100,000 acres. And they aren't just getting the deed to the land back, they are actively managing it as a massive salmon sanctuary and a tribal community forest. So you might be wondering, how exactly are they paying for all this? Well, they brilliantly financed a major portion of this 47,000-acre Blue Creek buyback using California's cap-and-trade climate market. Back in 2013, the Yurok became the very first entity in California to register a forest offset project. They generated millions of dollars by selling carbon credits for preserving their existing forests and then used that powerful new revenue stream to buy back their ancestral territory. It's a real game changer.
Now, to be totally impartial here, this specific financing mechanism is fiercely debated. Independent analysts like Carbon Plant, along with several investigative journalists, argue that California's forest offset protocol actually systematically overcredits carbon storage that would have happened anyway. On the flip side of that coin, the California Air Resources Board rigorously defends their methodology and the integrity of the whole program. But regardless of where you might stand on the complex climate accounting debate, the undeniable fact on the ground is that these credits funded real, tangible land return for these tribes.
And this restoration, it's happening on multiple, accelerating fronts all at once. Beyond just owning fee land, tribes are shifting from being completely managed off their ancestral territories to actively co-managing federal forests right alongside the U.S. government. They're bringing back traditional cultural burning to manage modern wildfire risks. And in healthcare, tribes are aggressively reclaiming their sovereignty. They're securing Medi-Cal reimbursement for traditional healing practices and getting federal flexibilities to provide care outside the traditional 4 walls of a clinic to better serve their rural reservations.
I think the ultimate emblem of this whole restoration can be found right in Jamestown, California. The Chicken Ranch Rancheria, which is a modest Miwok gaming tribe, is taking its resources and state grants to build a massive $32 million health and wellness facility. And the most incredible part of this? It's completely open to the entire rural community, native and non-native alike. Casino revenue and state capital are literally being transformed into a vital public good in a region that suffers from a critical shortage of doctors.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, we can clearly see self-determination moving from just a hopeful aspiration into hard, tangible infrastructure. We're talking free-flowing rivers, massively expanded land bases, and state-of-the-art community clinics. But it leaves us with one final profound question to think about. In a history deeply defined by broken treaties and constantly shifting federal policies, will this hard-won co-managed autonomy permanently endure, or is this just another shifting phase in an unfinished story? Thanks so much for learning with me today.